Louis, kindly call Sister Veronica. For us, she is Sister Marie Therese. Call her, please. It is very urgent. I had a long and interesting letter from India. The sisters in India are anxious to hear from you the story of your life. As the founders of the Carmel Formation, I hope you will respect their desire. You too have a letter from India.
My very dear children, your dear Reverend Mother has begged me to write, I suppose for your amusement at recreation, some details of my poor life, which indeed has been full of incidents and, above all, full of the most wonderful proofs of the mercy of God towards me. So I have promised to send, from time to time, a sheet of paper with some little story of past events, as I recall them to my memory. I do not like talking about myself, but now I am old and eternity is near, so that I seems to disappear, whereas God and His mercy alone remain. I was born at Constantinople on the 1st of October 1823. My father was an Anglican clergyman and chaplain of the British Embassy in the city. My mother was a very religious person. My brother Henry, 2 years older to me, was born at Odessa in Russia. My two sisters, Mary Ann and Emily, who was deaf and dumb, were born at Constantinople. My grandfather was a clergyman of the Church of England, rector for 50 years of Rington, a village in Somersetshire. I was 5 years old when Catherine was born in London. About this time, I met with an accident which nearly killed me. Seeing my brother and cousin sliding down the stairs, I climbed up on the baluster to ride down to dinner. But, losing my balance, I toppled over to the next landing place. Senseless and with a deep gash on the left side of my mouth. I can only remember finding myself in bed where a surgeon had sewed up the gash, and for weeks I had only liquid food. It was also about this time I received my first whipping.
Papa, Sophie went to the cream jug and gave in to temptation.
Sophie, I've just taught you the lesson on thou shalt not steal, and you've gone and done just the opposite.
Sorry, Papa.
I must tell you, my dear children, that my third sister Emily was born deaf and dumb. When Miss Thornton, our governess, was giving us a lesson on the globe, Emily was made to sleep on the side of the table as she had not yet started walking. As the lessons went on, Emily woke up and took hold of my mother's smelling bottle with aromatic vinegar and pulled out the stopper. The strong spirit made the child cry and rub her eyes. Poor little thing, for a week she was not able to raise her eyelids. It was at this time we perceived she was deaf and dumb. As I was the eldest daughter, I took care of this dear little thing. I became like a second mamma to her. You must forgive me, my dear children, if this is nothing but a scribble, for I just write a little when I have time. In Corfu we lived 5 years. My father, a military chaplain, was occupied in translating the Bible into Greek. Before his marriage, he was a fellow of Oxford and knew 9 languages. He was well versed in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. I never saw him do anything which might be called a sin, either in impatience, uncharitableness, or ill temper with anyone. We always had family prayers. Sometimes we children used to go and look through the keyhole and see Papa kneeling in his study and praying aloud when he was alone. I never forget this scene. My mother was of a different character to my father. She was very pretty and fair, with blue eyes and long hair, which she used as a girl to wear in ringlets down to her waist. My mamma had her own convictions.
Children, come in please and help me out a little. Leave the servants to do their work.
Papa makes more impression than a whole long lecture from Mama.
Mama never allowed us to be with servants, fearing they would teach us things which are not fit for children to know. Greek and French we talked from earliest childhood. And my dear father used to have us 3 elder children come and read the New Testament in Greek, its original language. On Sundays, we had to listen to the sermons carefully and write them down for Papa's sake.
Marianne, I hate Sundays. It's a dreadful penance.
I know. Come on, Sophie. You hate writing down those sermons.
Sundays are anything but happy.
Sophie dear, Sunday means rest. No storybook, no play, not even music.
Oh God, I can't. Please, Papa. That's it.
One evening in Athens, when my family was having a fairly big party, I was dressed in white muslin, and I passed in front of the mirror many a time and looked into it. And I said to myself, I'm not ugly, as I thought I was. When I grew mature, I accused myself for giving into the venom of vanity. In the evening at the inn, when we were at Tyrol, we heard from below a murmur of many voices, as if answering to a litany. At other times, not a soul appeared on the road. And then, all at once, from the door of the church, we saw a crowd throng, just as if no one had remained to keep house. I remember my father and mother saying that nowhere else had they seen such religious people. My dear children, I must tell you about Athens, where my father had built a large house with a nice garden adjoining. And it was in this house that I have spent the happiest days of my girlhood. I was 12 years old, my brother 14, Marianne 10, and the other 2 were little ones. I never saw a more beautiful place, and I used to delight in our country life. My mother made us get up a little school for all the girls and boys of our peasants, and we used to take the greatest pleasure in teaching them, and they became quite civilized and used to drop their little curtsy and gave a try at their caps when they met us, to our great delight. We learned music from the age of 5 and also drawing. I always remember how I imagined that I played the organ in my teens. My father had a beautiful voice and sang the bass. My sister Marianne the second, and I used to sing the soprano.
My peace I leave you, my peace I give you, not as the world gives, I give unto you.
My God, who's it? Not a sound, not even a soul to be seen and heard. It seemed to me that I had received a message, like a celestial perfume which would escape if I told anyone. It was only when I had become a Catholic I could speak of it. My dear children, my father on his way to Jerusalem fell ill at Mount Carmel.
Mary Ann, dear, being so near, you do not know that my pilgrimage is over. Jesus is calling me to himself. I shall miss your mom, Henry, Sophie, and my younger children.
My dear father died on the 8th of May, 1845, at Beirut. After my father's death, the family circle broke up, and we never again returned to live in the old house at Athens. Not very long after, I became engaged to be married to a young officer of the Navy who used to come and visit us at Castanatissa.
Oh, Sophie, you are so beautiful. I have never seen a picture like yours. My job is in the way, Sophie. I have to wait a year or two to make you my wife.
Mama wants me married as early as possible.
Oh, my dear Sophie, I am gonna miss you. Do look after yourself. I will write to you as soon as I reach.
We set out for Naples in 1846-47 in a place at Portizi. It was near the foot of Mount Vesuvius, which was just in the season of eruption, and we had the splendid view of this famous volcano throwing up liquid lava with flames and smoke. The sight was awfully beautiful. The climate of Naples did not suit me. I became very ill during the winter. I was much disturbed in mind and entered the Catholic churches to pray. Some invisible attraction seemed to draw me there. It was decided that I was to go on first with my brother to England and stay with my future father and mother-in-law, while my mother went with Mary Ann, Emily and Catherine to Rome and then to London. The journey did me good, and I soon became quite well and rejoined my mother and sisters. I made my confession to Mr. Richards, the Anglican Puseyite clergyman, and I experienced God's forgiveness. Until then, I was looking forward to my marriage in a year or two with great joy. But suddenly, I had become a completely different person. I felt as if Jesus had taken possession of my heart and that he had turned out all the affection except to become a nun somewhere. I worried Mr. Richards to allow me to break off my engagement that I might be free to belong only to God. After repeated requests, Mr. Richards allowed me to write. I was delighted, and Mr. Richards was amazed when the answer came. Mr. Richards said he had not expected such a reply, which was a sure sign that such was the will of God. A happy and blessed New Year to all of you, my dear children. It freezes so hard today that I am writing on my knees and my fingers can hardly hold the pen. I have told you earlier how I advanced towards Catholicism. I always went and knelt before the side altar where he resided and used to cry and weep over my sins all by myself. See how the Good Shepherd drew his poor lamb to himself, even without my knowing he was there. When we were at Malta, our Catholic servants, seeing Emily's sinking condition, baptized her. Emily was 20 years old. She was just like a baby in innocence and ignorance of evil. My dear children, let me tell you what happened to us after we became Catholics. After Marianne and I became Catholics, we went to break the news to Mama. I knelt down beside her and said, we had just come from the Catholic Church where we had been received. My Mama was upset and insulted our Blessed Lady. Henry, my brother, called me for breakfast. I left Marianne and Mom and ran out to meet him. He said, why don't the others come for breakfast? Who is crying there? I said, Mama is crying because we've become Catholics this morning. He looked at me in earnest and gave a kind of half laugh. Well, at any rate, now we know what you are. You were Catholics before in secret, now you are so openly. My poor Mama went in grief to my little sister Emily's grave and spent a good part of the day there. It is there in Malta, Mr. God-fearing, the young Navy officer, came with his ship, and I saw him once more to tell him that my happiness now depended upon no one and nothing in this world, that my heart was given to God and not any other person alive. We then said goodbye, and I was free for God to work His will on me. My youngest sister Catherine got married to Mr. Loffier, a man 19 years older than herself, and so vanished all her childhood aspirations to become a nun. My brother, who had gone off to his village, Castanetissa, fell ill, and as he was alone, my mother wished to go and take care of him. Marianne also had the fever, and the doctor advised my mother not to take her to a place where there was no doctor. So Mama thought of sending us to a convent in Syra.
Sophie, please write to the convent in Syra and ask the superior whether she could accommodate you both. Also inquire how much I should pay them as board.
Both of us were overjoyed. I wrote to the superior, and we were welcomed. Poor Mama. I never again saw her till after I was a religious in 1851. My brother came to take me home. Poor Mama, her mother's heart forgot her anger. She was happy and kept looking at me as though she could not recognize me. And after a deep gaze, she said that she had never seen me look so beautiful. My sister, not being called to be a sister of Saint Joseph, entered the congregation of Ursulines at Syra. I made my profession on the second Sunday in October 1852. Not long after I had made my profession, my brother Henry went to England and was married. He and his wife Harriet had a little child who was only a few months old when a tragedy took place. Robbers entered the house and killed both Henry and Harriet, leaving the baby alive in that fatal room. But the child fell ill after a few months and joined his parents. My mother was dreadfully cut up at the loss of her dear little grandson. My dear children, Reverend Mother General sent for me in obedience to come to Rome, where she resided. I was enchanted to see Rome, and I had the happiness of meeting the Holy Father Pius IX and receiving his benediction. His presence was to me like that of the Blessed Sacrament. After staying in Rome for 6 months, I was sent as superior to Tremerol, a little village in Brittany in France. After a year, my new assignment was to go to India. to Calicut. In 1861, I had been sent to Calicut to found the first convent that had ever existed there, and I had 3 other sisters and a postulant. My children in Calicut never grieved me. Everyone, young and old, considered me as their mother. Father Mari Ephraim was their father, for indeed he was a missionary after God's own heart. Unhappily, the bishop, Michael Anthony, transferred him to Mahi, and I also received the order to go to Rangoon. I met with an accident in Rangoon, so I returned to Europe by order of the doctors. I met Father Mari Ephraim in Rome. He said he would wait to communicate till my vocation to Carmel was finalized by a Jesuit in Rome, Reverend Father de Villefort. Monsignor Howard and Monsignor Talbot, private Carmelengo of the Holy Father, both favored my entry into the Carmel. I have not yet told you, my dear children, that it was at Calicut that God gave me a vocation to become a Carmelite. I wrote to Mother Emily about my desire towards the Carmelite order. I believe that I was a great grief to her. After a short period at Rangoon and Rome, I was given an assignment to be the mistress of novices. This was to dissuade me from my desire to enter Carmel, and so I had to go to Marseille with Mother Emily. Among the 21 novices and postulants, there was a holy child with whom my life was in future to be united in a most wonderful manner. She was a young Arab girl from Nazareth, honored with the 5 precious stigmata of Jesus, of whom I knew absolutely nothing. Seeing me with Mother Emily, this novice went to her mistress who was ill and said, "A tall sister is come. I love her very much. Sister Veronica will be mistress of novices. You'll see." And so it happened. I was entrusted with the care of this holy child and became witness of the marvels God worked in her. He permitted that she was not given the holy habit of the order. I am so firmly convinced that I was brought to Marseille to be the means of conducting this holy child to the Carmel of Pau. We were welcomed in Pau on 14th June 1867, the feast of the Holy Trinity. I give these little details to show that I had not quit the congregation of Saint Joseph, but merely obeyed the call of God. In the Carmel of Pau, everything was sweet and easy for me, and I found myself completely in my vocation, and that I should have wished to remain there always. But according to God's will, I made my profession of regular third order after a retreat of 12 days. I received the black veil with the same ceremonies as the Carmelites of the second order. My dear children, I had to go alone, not knowing where to start the foundation of the third order, and it was not God's will that Mary of Jesus should accompany me. At La Roche, a kind lady received me into her house until I had found and taken a little lodging where I might await an answer from Reverend Father Dominic. Finally, the letter came with an apology stating that he was ill and therefore he could not communicate. He ordered me to leave immediately and pass by places where he desired the priors to give me every help in their power to found a third order for the missions. I had to trudge from place to place and brought nothing but embarrassment to myself, and the humiliation of being suspected to be an escaped nun. Poverty to the point of destitution. I had nothing to show, neither candidates, nor house, not even a place. Absolutely nothing. Obedience took me to Bayonne. I straight went into Carmel. The community there welcomed me. They offered me their temporary house, which was occupied by tenants who would shift within a month. It was adjacent to the Carmel. Joy and peace filled my desolate heart, and a new courage to work for the glory of God and the good of our holy order in the missions of India. Bishop Maury Ephraim had visited Bayonne on his way to take part in the Vatican Council. Father Lazare, his vicar general, had accompanied him. The bishop had stipulated which tertiaries would go to India, but the news reached me late, and I could not get Sister Agnes's outfit ready in time for her to be of the party, and this annoyed the bishop, and his reaction shattered me a great deal. It was 19th August 1870 when 9 Carmelites left Pau to go to India. 6 were cloistered Carmelites and 3 were tertiaries, Carmelites of the Third Order, whom the Lord allowed me to found for his work in India. The first 3 apostolic Carmelites, Sister Marie des Anges, Sister Elias, and Sister Marie Joseph, were soon followed by Sister Agnes and Sister Cecile. Thanks be to God for my dear child Agnes, for a long and interesting letter from Madras. Sister Agnes and Cecile will be of great help to the mission in India. My dear children, I am praying much for you, that humility and charity may reign among you. Sister Mary of Jesus Crucified had made her profession at Mangalore on the 21st of November 1871. She had the grace of suffering the stigmata and with many other heavenly gifts, which the Reverend Mother Prioress and her mistress of novices could not take it as coming from God. Our Lord has commanded the child to tell only to her confessor, Reverend Father Lazare, and to Bishop Maury Ephraim, if he wished it. The 2 religious persuaded the bishop to believe that she was under the influence of an evil spirit and treated her with utmost vigor, as well as Father Lazare, her confessor. He was disgraced and sent back to France, as well as Sister Mary of Jesus Crucified. Before she left, she told the bishop, "Monseigneur, you are sending away Father Lazare. Before 6 months are past, you yourself will die in anguish." And so it came to pass that the very next year, in 1873, Monsignor Maury Ephraim breathed his last during the High Mass, nearly alone, for all his priests were assisting in the cathedral. As the foundation in Mangalore was completed, I began to feel the little Carmel in Bayonne had served its purpose. There was trouble in the little Carmel in India, and Bishop Lacroix advised me to close down the little Carmel, and he said no Carmelite from his diocese would go to India. The last days in Bayonne were real agony for me. God gave me the grace to settle every one of my children before I returned to the Carmel of Pau. My dear Marie des Anges, I thank you for your affection and your remembrance. Your schools will continue to flourish. It will, I suppose, be advantageous to have your schools exactly like those in Europe. My health is not bad. I am very feeble. I am longing for the moment of deliverance, of going to see Jesus in heaven. God wishes our lamps be trimmed, and that we be ready when we hear the call. Behold, the bridegroom has come.
Our lamps are trimmed.